This episode of Anchored in Milwaukee, the official podcast of FC Milwaukee Torrent, is sponsored by Atlanta Mortgage, Sobelman's Pub, Associated Bank, and Orenda Cafe. If you'd like to learn more about sponsoring the club, email us at sales@milwaukeetorrent.com. Welcome back. It's Anchored in Milwaukee, the official podcast of your FC Milwaukee Torrent. I am your host, Luke, and I am super glad to have you here today. We're going to be discussing all the latest news and happenings with Milwaukee's only outdoor professional soccer club, and this is an episode we have been waiting to have for a very long time, because we have actual games to talk about, like actual played on the field with final scores and everything games. After sitting out the entire 2020 season due to the pandemic, both the men and the women have returned to the field, and both teams have been sensational since returning. But we have so much more to talk about than just games. We're not even going to have a guest today because we have so much stuff we want to cover. But don't worry, we will recap the 6 games that have already been played between the two teams. But first things first, we need to give you an update on some big news that has broken regarding the men's team. How does everyone feel about tournaments? Because this past week, it was announced that your FC Milwaukee Torrent were going to be one of the teams that will be participating in the second ever NISA Independent Cup. Here are some excerpts from the official announcement on the Independent Cup. The National Independent Soccer Association announces the return of the NISA Independent Cup for July and August, with 36 clubs playing in 9 regions across the country. 9 current NISA clubs will be participating, as well as at least 1 club from 8 different amateur leagues. The Independent Cup, introduced last year as a regional competition, provides independent, professional, and amateur clubs a platform to play together on a national stage. The tournament kickoff is July 9th. Each of the 9 regional competitions will crown a champion. The Torrent will be part of the Midwest region and will face off against opponents Med City FC, which is out of Rochester, Minnesota, and they play in the Northern Conference in the NPSL Midwest region. The second opponent will be Union Dubuque FC, who play in a new league called the Midwest Premier League. And the final opponent is Chicago House AC. Chicago House is a new team that'll be starting play in NISA's official league this year. They present an interesting matchup as they currently only have 2 announced players on their roster. The team was co-founded by Milwaukee native Peter Wilt. The tournament begins July 9th, but fixtures have not yet been announced, so we don't know when the Torrent are playing. Stay tuned to Anchored in Milwaukee for more discussion on the Independent Cup, and we'll present you the matchups and information as it comes out. We're hoping in the coming weeks to have some guests on to talk about the tournament and where the Torrent fit in this exciting competition. All right, the time has come. Games have been played, and we are going to talk about them. There's been 6 in total, 4 for the men, 2 for the women. We are going to start with the women. The Torrent women's team made their long-awaited return to action on May 22nd. The women made a trek down to Cedar Rapids to take on the Iowa Raptors FC. Like most teams restarting after being off for all of 2020, there are a lot of unknowns for the Torrent as they started their season. But one thing the Torrent can always count on is that Jordan Raleigh is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Raleigh needed just 25 minutes to hit the back of the net and put the Torrent up 1-0 over the home side. Quinlan Warren was in goal and stood tall the entire game. The Torrent grabbed the W in their season opener with a 1-0 score, and Warren earned the first clean sheet of the season. May 30th saw the women return to Hart Park, where the home fans were overjoyed to finally have them back in Wauwatosa. The Green Bay Glory were the opponents for the home opener, and the Glory were of course founded by ex-Torrent player Kerry Giocaris. The Torrent again jumped out to a first-half lead, this time on a brilliant free kick from defender Shannon McWilliams that curved into the near post. The Torrent were not content to sit on 1 goal, and the lead was double in the 67th minute by, you guessed it, Jordan Raleigh once again, who powered a header to the back of the net and put the home side up 2-0. That was Raleigh's second goal of the season if you're keeping track. The Glory did take one back late in the game, but it would not be enough as Milwaukee held on for a 2-1 win and now have a perfect record of 2-0. The men started their season on the road at FC Columbus on May 8th. Any worries that the Torrent men might be rusty or unprepared after a year off were put to bed as they took all 3 points from FC Columbus. The first goal of the season was somewhat poetically scored by James Weber. Weber, as you may recall, was the man to score the first goal in FC Milwaukee Torrent history way back in the day. And now he grabs his first of this new era of Torrent soccer. Weber entered the match as a sub in the 59th minute along with Alexander Fillion. Weber scored in the 74th minute, and his submate, Alexander Fillion, doubled the lead just 2 minutes later in the 76th. The final score was 2-0, FC Milwaukee Torrent, your winners. Pablo Ortiz recorded his first Torrent clean sheet of the season, and if you're keeping track at home, both Jordan Raleigh and James Weber are former guests of Anchored in Milwaukee, so we're going to take credit for all those goals. May 15th was the Torrent's long-awaited return to Hart Park, and the dedicated Milwaukee fans. They took on Panathinaikos Chicago. It was a very cold and rainy affair, but those who stuck it out were rewarded with a tense and pretty exciting game. The Torrent came out aggressive in front of their home fans and made a splash early. Ian Cerro notched his first goal of the season in the 22nd minute to put the Torrent up 1-0. It only took another 14 minutes for the Torrent to double their lead when Tony Doefeld put home a goal to put the Torrent up 2-0. As the game approached stoppage time, it looked like Milwaukee was going to coast to another 2-0 win, but stoppage time would see 3 more goals and a red card. Alex Fillion, again used as a substitute, scored his second goal of the season in stoppage time to put the Torrent up 3-0. But Panathinaikos were not going to go down without a fight, and they roared back with 2 stoppage time goals, one from Michael Burzawa and one from Karol Andra. That put Panathinaikos within 1 with a score of 3-2. The visitors went down to 10 men as Dionysios Chrononopoulos was sent off. It was a valiant comeback attempt by Chicago, but it was not enough to overwhelm the men in blue, and they held on for a 3-2 win and improved their record to 2-0. After all that excitement at Hart Park, it was time for Game 3, and the men hit the road again, this time to Lafayette, Indiana, to take on FC Indiana. The game had a lot in common with the home opener in Hart Park, as it saw FC Milwaukee Torrent come out with a 3-2 victory. But unlike the home opener, this game saw more fireworks in the first half than stoppage time. The Torrent once again rampaged their way to a 3-0 lead. The goals came fast and they came early. Emiliano Caballero scored just 4 minutes into the game. The shell shock for the home side was about to get worse as Tony Doefeld scored immediately in the 5th minute, and he was not done as he scored his second of the game and third of the season in the 20th minute. FC looked to try and mount a comeback. Andrew Revenales scored in the 22nd minute, and Ricardo John finished the scoring in the 60th minute. But that would be it for FC Indiana, and the Torrent went on to their 3rd consecutive victory, final score 3-2. Caballero, who scored the first goal of the game, also received the Torrent's first red card of the season as he was sent off in the 74th minute, thus making him unavailable for the Torrent's 4th game, which was to be held again at home on Saturday, May 29th. This was a pretty interesting matchup for the Torrent. They were 3-0, and standing in their way was the also undefeated Carpathia FC. The Torrent came out aggressive again in the first half, and though they dominated the first 45 minutes of play, they remained deadlocked at 0-0 when the halftime whistle blew. The battle of the undefeateds was still stalemated halfway through the second half, when Torrent right back Mateus Lopez, who was already having a pretty lockdown performance on defense, powered his way into the box and hammered a shot past Carpathia FC and into the net. It put the Torrent up 1-0. Carpathia didn't make things easier on themselves when they took a red card in about the 76th minute. Kieran Hayes actually received a second yellow card, having received one earlier in the game on a foul. He got one this time for dissent after questioning whether Pablo Ortiz was wasting time on a goal kick. This put Carpathia at 10 men. The game was then put out of reach by Torrent substitute Eduardo Santa Anna, who scored in stoppage time, giving the Torrent a 2-0 lead. That lead would hold, Ortiz would get his second clean sheet of the year, and the Torrent would remain the only undefeated team in the Great Lakes Conference. Looking at the standings for the men, you will currently see FC Milwaukee Torrent is in first place with 12 points. Carpathia is in second with 6 points. FC Columbus and Panathinaikos are tied with 3 points. And FC Indiana is still looking for that first point as they sit in last with 0. The Torrent played one more game than the rest of their opponents. So if you're keeping track at home, that is 6 games for the Milwaukee Torrent. That is 6 wins. Both teams are going to look to keep up the momentum as the season continues. The women are going to begin a 3-game road trip on Saturday, June 5th at Chicago City Soccer Club. Kickoff is scheduled for 4:30. From there, they'll travel to Green Bay, and they'll have a rematch with the Glory on the 13th. Then they return to Chicago again on the 19th to play the Chicago Dutch Lions. You can see the women again at Hart Park on Wednesday, June 23rd, when they take on crosstown rivals Milwaukee Bavarians at 7 p.m. The men are next in action Saturday, June 12th at Hart Park, they'll be rematching against FC Columbus with a 7 p.m. kickoff time before heading to Chicago on their own to take on Panathinaikos in Naperville. That is going to do it for this edition of Anchored in Milwaukee, the official podcast of your FC Milwaukee Torrent. We appreciate you checking out this recap episode as we keep you up to date on all the latest scores of the Milwaukee Torrent. As always, we thank you for listening and subscribing. If you want to support the show, give us a rating on your podcast app or tell a friend. If you want to see all the latest breaking news, ticket information, or get the latest gear, visit MilwaukeeTorrent.com. A special thank you to our sponsors, Atlanta Mortgage, Sobelman's Pub, Associated Bank, and Arenda Cafe. If you'd like to learn more about sponsoring the club, please contact us. You can reach us through email, sales@MilwaukeeTorrent.com. This episode was produced and edited by Jaden Stevenson. I'm your host, Luke, and until next time, stay anchored together.